Picture this. You're standing in front of someone you love, looking into their eyes, feeling that connection that makes everything else disappear. You believe this is different. This person is different. This time, love will last. But Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who saw through every human illusion, would look at you and say something that will shatter everything you think you know about love. He'd tell you that betrayal isn't something that might happen. It's built into the very foundation of what you call love. Every romantic moment you've experienced, every promise of forever, every time you felt like you found the one, it was all leading to one inevitable destination. And the darkest part? You chose it. You walked into it willingly. You called it beautiful while it was destroying you. Right now, in this moment, millions of people are falling in love, making promises, believing they've found something eternal. And Nietzsche would tell every single one of them the same thing. You're not in love. You're in a trap so perfectly designed that you'll defend it, fight for it, and refuse to see it until it's too late. Because here's what nobody tells you about love. The betrayal doesn't come at the end. The betrayal is love itself. Society has sold you a fairy tale, dressed it up in wedding vows and romantic comedies, convinced you that love is the ultimate goal, the final achievement, the thing that completes you. But Nietzsche spent his life studying human nature, tearing apart our comfortable illusions, and what he discovered about love is so disturbing that most people refuse to even consider it. He wrote, "There is always some madness in love, but there is also always some reason in madness." That reason, that's what we're about to expose. The cold, brutal logic behind why love always ends in betrayal. Not sometimes. Not if you choose the wrong person. Always. Because the very thing you call love contains within it the seeds of its own destruction. Think about every relationship you've seen fall apart. Your parents, your friends, celebrities you thought had perfect relationships. What do they all have in common? They started exactly where you are now, believing their love was special, different, immune to the forces that destroyed everyone else's relationships. They were wrong. You're wrong. And in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to prove it to you through 7 dark reasons that Nietzsche identified. 7 fundamental truths about human nature that make betrayal not just possible, but inevitable. Warning: what you're about to learn will change how you see every relationship, including the one you're in right now. You'll start noticing patterns you've been blind to. You'll recognize dynamics you've been denying. You'll see the trap before it closes. And that knowledge comes with a price, because once you see the truth about love, you can't unsee it. Once you understand why betrayal is inevitable, you can't pretend it's not. The comfort of ignorance will be gone forever. But the power of knowledge will replace it. The power to choose differently. The power to love with your eyes open. The power to see betrayal coming before it destroys you. So here's the question that will determine everything about your relationships from this moment forward. Are you brave enough to hear the truth? Because Nietzsche didn't write comfortable philosophy. He wrote philosophy for dangerous minds, for people willing to face reality without the consolation of lies. And the reality about love, it's darker than you ever imagined. Nietzsche wrote, "In revenge and in love, woman is more barbarous than man." But he wasn't being sexist. He was identifying something fundamental about human relationships. Every act of love is simultaneously an act of power. Every moment of intimacy is also a moment of conquest. Think about the beginning of any relationship. You call it falling in love. Nietzsche would call it something else entirely. A power struggle disguised as romance. When you pursue someone, you're not just seeking connection. You're seeking validation, control, the ability to influence another person's emotional state. Watch what happens when someone says they love you. You feel powerful, don't you? You've captured something, conquered territory in another person's heart. Your worth increases in your own eyes because someone else values you. That's not love, that's ego. And your ego needs constant feeding. At first, the other person's attention feeds it perfectly. They text you constantly. They prioritize you. They change their schedule to accommodate you. You feel like a king or queen. But here's where Nietzsche's dark insight becomes undeniable. Power dynamics never stay static. They're always shifting, always creating winners and losers. The person who loves more has less power. The person who needs less has more control. And both people in the relationship are constantly, unconsciously calculating this balance. You might not admit it. You might not even realize you're doing it. But you are. Every time you wait an extra hour to text back, you're testing power. Every time you make them wait, you're asserting dominance. Every time you withhold affection, you're creating scarcity to increase your value. Love isn't a partnership of equals. It's a constant renegotiation of power. And here's why this leads to inevitable betrayal. The person with less power will eventually rebel. They'll stop giving so much. They'll pull back. They'll find ways to reclaim their autonomy. Or they'll find someone else who makes them feel powerful again. Nietzsche understood that humans need to feel powerful more than they need to feel loved. We'll sacrifice love to maintain our sense of power. We'll betray the person we claim to love if staying feels like submission. Think about the last time a relationship ended. Really examine it honestly. Wasn't the breakup fundamentally about power? One person felt controlled, suffocated, diminished, or one person felt disrespected, undervalued, taken for granted. Both are power dynamics, not love dynamics. This is why the beginning of relationships feels so intense. You're both wielding power perfectly. You're both getting validation while maintaining independence. But as intimacy increases, as you become more vulnerable, the power balance shifts. Someone gains the upper hand. And the moment that happens, betrayal becomes inevitable. Because the person with less power will do anything to reclaim it. They'll withdraw emotionally, they'll criticize to diminish you. They'll cheat to prove they still have options. Not because they don't love you, because love isn't enough to override the fundamental human need for power. Nietzsche wrote, "One is punished most for one's virtues, and in relationships your virtues become weapons against you. Your loyalty gives them power to take you for granted. Your honesty gives them information to manipulate you. Your love gives them the ability to hurt you. This isn't romantic. This isn't the story you've been told. But this is reality. You think you know who you are. You think the person you love knows who they are." Nietzsche would laugh at both assumptions. He wrote, "Become who you are. Not discover who you are, become. Because who you are isn't fixed. It's constantly changing, evolving, being created through your choices and experiences. And this creates a problem that destroys every long-term relationship. The person you fell in love with doesn't exist anymore, and neither do you. Think about who you were 5 years ago. Your beliefs, your goals, your personality. You're not that person anymore, are you? You've changed, grown, evolved, or maybe you've regressed. Either way, you're different. Now apply that to your relationship. You fell in love with version 1 of your partner, but version 2 is already emerging. Version 3 will follow. By version 5, they might be unrecognizable from the person you originally loved. And here's the betrayal nobody talks about. When your partner changes, it feels like a betrayal of who they promised to be. When they promised forever, they were making a promise that's impossible to keep. Because the person making the promise won't exist in 10 years. A different version of them will exist. And that version might not want to keep the promises the previous version made. This is Nietzsche's insight. The self is not a thing, but a process. And you can't hold a process to a promise made by a previous version of itself. Watch what happens in long relationships. Partners start saying, "You're not the person I married," and they're right. That person is gone. A new person has replaced them. And this new person has different needs, different desires, different values. But society demands they honor commitments made by someone who no longer exists. That's impossible. That's why betrayal is inevitable. Human beings want contradictory things simultaneously. We want security and adventure, stability and excitement, possession and freedom. Nietzsche identified this as the fundamental tension at the heart of all relationships. He wrote, "The demand to be loved is the greatest of all arrogant presumptions." Why? Because demanding love requires demanding someone surrender their freedom to you. Think about what you're really asking when you ask someone to commit to you exclusively. You're asking them to give up every other romantic possibility that will ever exist. You're asking them to close all other doors and keep only your door open. Forever. That's an absurd demand. but we make it constantly. We call it love. Nietzsche would call it tyranny disguised as romance. Every relationship operates on an impossible contradiction. You want your partner to choose you freely, but you also want to eliminate their freedom to choose anyone else. Watch what happens in any long-term relationship. The initial excitement fades not because the person becomes boring, but because they become predictable. Possession kills mystery. Security destroys desire. When you know someone will always be there, they lose the very quality that made them attractive, their freedom to leave. Nietzsche understood that desire requires distance, longing requires absence, passion requires uncertainty. But relationships are designed to eliminate all three. You move in together to eliminate distance. You see each other constantly to eliminate absence. You make commitments to eliminate uncertainty. And then you wonder why the passion died. You killed it. You killed it by getting exactly what you wanted. Complete access, total security, guaranteed presence. Here's the betrayal that nobody admits. The moment your partner becomes yours, they stop being desirable in the same way. Not because they changed, but because possession transforms how you perceive them. They're no longer a person with infinite possibilities. They're your person with limited options. And limited options bore the human mind. Nietzsche famously wrote, "There are no facts, only interpretations." And nowhere is this more devastating than in romantic relationships. Because love requires two people to believe incompatible interpretations of the same reality. You believe you're a devoted partner who sacrifices constantly. They believe you're controlling and demanding. You believe you give space and freedom. They believe you're distant and uninvolved. Both interpretations exist simultaneously. Both are real to the person holding them, and neither can be objectively proven. This is the betrayal of perspective. The relationship you think you're in is not the relationship your partner thinks they're in. You're both living in different realities, calling them by the same name. Think about the last argument you had with a partner. You had completely different accounts of what happened, didn't you? Not because one of you was lying, but because you experienced different realities. Nietzsche understood that every human being lives in a self-created interpretation of events. We don't experience objective reality. We experience our narrative about reality. And in relationships, we're constantly authoring conflicting narratives. When you text back slowly, you think you're being thoughtful, taking time to craft meaningful responses. They think you're losing interest, deprioritizing them. Same action, completely different meanings. And here's why this leads to inevitable betrayal. You'll betray each other's expectations constantly because you're operating from different interpretations of what the relationship means, what actions signify, what behaviors demonstrate love. Nietzsche wrote, "All things are subject to interpretation. Whichever interpretation prevails at a given time is a function of power." In relationships, both partners are fighting for their interpretation to prevail, but both versions can't be true simultaneously. Someone's reality has to be denied. Someone's interpretation has to be wrong. That's betrayal at the most fundamental level. Nietzsche wrote, "The lonely one offers his hand too quickly to whomever he encounters." This reveals something most people never confront. You didn't fall in love with your partner. You fell in love with the idea of not being alone. Think about what drives people into relationships. It's rarely the specific person. It's the terror of isolation, the fear of facing existence without someone to validate your experience, the anxiety of being fundamentally alone in the universe. Your partner didn't cure your loneliness. They covered it temporarily, like a painkiller that stops working once you build tolerance. And here's the betrayal that cuts deepest. You used another human being as medication for your existential terror. You didn't love them for who they are. You loved them for making you feel less alone. They did the same to you. Both of you entered the relationship from a place of lack, of incompleteness, of desperate need. Nietzsche understood that most human connection is really just mutual exploitation. Two people using each other to avoid facing themselves. But here's what happens when you use another person as shelter from existential loneliness. Eventually you realize they can't actually solve the problem. You're still alone, even when they're holding you, even when they're listening, even when they're saying they love you. Because loneliness isn't about physical presence. It's about the fundamental impossibility of truly knowing another person or being truly known by them. Nietzsche called this pathos of distance, the unbridgeable gap between all human beings. And relationships, rather than closing this gap, often make you more aware of it. Every relationship requires sacrifice. You give up other romantic options. You compromise on how you spend your time. You adjust your behavior to accommodate another person's needs. And initially, these sacrifices feel good, noble even. You're doing them for love. But Nietzsche identified something crucial about sacrifice. Every sacrifice creates debt. Not legally, psychologically. When you sacrifice for someone, you unconsciously expect reciprocation. But they don't. They can't. Because they're busy tracking their own sacrifices, which feel much larger to them than yours do. This is the mathematics of resentment. You both believe you're sacrificing more. You both believe you're compromising more. You both believe you're giving more than you're receiving. And you're both right. Because sacrifice feels much heavier when you're the one carrying it. Their sacrifices are invisible to you. Your sacrifices are invisible to them. Watch what happens over years of relationship. You start keeping score. Maybe not consciously, but your psyche tracks every compromise you made. And your score says you've given more than you received. Their score says the opposite. This is why long-term couples argue about the past so much. They're arguing about whose sacrifices count more. This brings us to the seventh and final dark reason why love always ends in betrayal. Nietzsche declared, "God is dead and we have killed him." Most people misunderstand this statement. He wasn't celebrating, he was warning. When traditional sources of meaning collapsed, humans were left with a terrifying freedom, the freedom to create their own meaning, and they're terrible at it. So they do something desperate. They try to make their romantic partner into God. They try to make love into the ultimate meaning of existence. This is the greatest betrayal of all. You're asking another flawed, confused, mortal human being to provide what God used to provide. Ultimate meaning, absolute value, existential purpose. And they can't. Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But modern people have made their partner into their why, their reason for existing, their source of meaning. And when the relationship struggles, when love fades, when betrayal happens, they don't just lose a partner, they lose their entire reason for being. This is why breakups feel like death, because you didn't just build a relationship, you built a religion, and your partner was the deity. Here's the final betrayal that destroys everything. Your partner will fail to be your God. Because they're human, they'll disappoint you, they'll change, they'll reveal themselves to be as lost and confused as you are. Now you understand the 7 dark reasons. The will to power masquerading as love, the impossibility of stable identity, the contradiction between possession and freedom, the incompatibility of different interpretations, the inescapability of existential loneliness, the mathematics of sacrifice and resentment, and the attempt to make love replace God. These aren't pessimistic theories. These are observations of how relationships actually function versus how we pretend they function. Nietzsche wasn't telling you to avoid love. He was telling you to love with your eyes open, to see the betrayal coming not as a surprise, but as an inevitability built into the structure of human relationships. And here's what changes when you understand this. You stop taking betrayal personally. You recognize it as the natural outcome of impossible expectations. The strongest relationships aren't the ones that avoid betrayal. They're the ones built by people who understand betrayal is inevitable and choose each other anyway. Not from need, not from fear of loneliness, not from the belief that the other person completes them, but from the conscious choice to create meaning together while remaining complete as individuals. This is amor fati, Nietzsche's love of fate, accepting reality as it is, including the dark reality that love contains betrayal, and choosing to love anyway, not naively, not blindly, but with full awareness of what you're walking into. The question isn't whether you'll experience betrayal in love. You will. The question is whether you'll let that betrayal destroy you or teach you, whether you'll retreat into cynicism or advance into wisdom. Write in the comments, I choose eyes open. Show that you're someone who can handle reality without the comfort of illusions. Someone strong enough to love without the lies. Someone brave enough to face what Nietzsche faced and keep loving anyway. Tap that subscribe button because you've just proven you're ready for truth that most people run from. You're the kind of person who doesn't need sugar-coated philosophy or comfortable lies. You want reality straight, no chaser. And there's so much more reality to explore together. Hit the like button because this video challenged something in you. It made you uncomfortable. It forced you to question assumptions you've never questioned. That discomfort is growth. That questioning is evolution. And your like tells me you're ready for more. Because what I'm preparing for you next goes even deeper. The philosophers saw through every illusion. They decoded every trap. They revealed every lie. And I'm bringing all of it to you. Stay ready. Stay subscribed. Stay awake. Because once your eyes are open, there's no going back. And the journey we're on together is just beginning.